wanted to do is get a sense of who we've got sort of in the audience. So let's do this sort of by show of hands. Put your hands up if you are in a technology function within your organisation. Oh, wow. So that's probably most of you, about 2/3 perhaps. Put your hand up if you work in product. Got a spattering of those. All right, so it's mostly tech and product folks. Anybody who works elsewhere, like editorial, for example? A couple of editorial people. Anyone in production? We've got a production for ish, production-ish. All right. Anything else that anyone who hasn't put their hand up? What is it? Where are you? Sorry? Partnerships. What are you, policy, is it, maybe?
A bit of everything.
Strategy, policy, partnerships, that sort of thing. All right, okay, so we've got mostly a room of technologists and a few product people and a little bit of editorial and some spattering of various job roles. All right, so that's who we're talking to. What I thought would be a good question to start with is, in general terms, so not talking about AI, let's take a step back. And let's think about technology and technology strategy. So we're all talking about AI now, but it's not that long ago, as was mentioned earlier, that we were talking about blockchain, right? So every time there's a new technology, then there's a lot of hype about it. You know, the Gartner hype cycle, everyone gets terribly excited about it, and then there's a crash of disillusionment, and then eventually the real use cases sort of emerge, and then we have some, you know, the rise of productivity, I think it's called, on the hype cycle. So in terms of that, how do we make decisions? How do we go about thinking about and advising various stakeholders within our organisation, whether it's the board or our colleagues or whoever, about technology? How do we avoid sort of the anti-patterns? What are the risks and how are the approaches in general to thinking about technology? So Reshma, shall we start with you?
Right. Hi, I'm Reshma, again, independent consultant, but previous to this, I felt I used to work at Springer Nature and was responsible for trying to drive their AI transformation within the organization. That was my last gig. So I thought I had to just credentialize in a room full of academic publishers as to why I'm here. It's a really good, really good question. And I think that the biggest thing that I've realized with, you know, I started my career in technology. I've been in technology for about 20 years, which makes me feel really old. And you begin to realize that basically the organization that we have really is looking for being able to find an edge or not to be left behind, right? And when we were trying to talk about either that being blockchain, Web3, or even AI, now everything is about, hey, my CEO friend basically knows that you could get better productivity, and I definitely want to be able to make sure that we're not left behind. And what we found, at least I found when I was working within the Springer Nature context, was it was incredibly important for us to be able to find the 1 or 2 use cases that we could show people and get really excited about. Well, we took a big step back and really looked at it systemically and looked at what areas could we really look to be able to implement it that actually had real force. And sadly, it's not necessary that the person who's actually really excited about it is necessarily doing that longer term thinking. And I think those 2 different perspectives really help drive organizational improvement, productivity, and also organizational change. So those were the thoughts from me.
Hong, what are your thoughts about technology in general and how you navigate these conversations?
Yeah, normally when we start, the new technologies, we think about, from 3 aspects: the cost, value, and the risk. So value is normally, especially for the emerging technology, when people are very excited, and especially the company like as you said, CEO. So they want to jump into that to develop something. But what's the value? I mean, do they generate the business value? Do they align with strategy? And do you have this, can you use the simple technology, not necessarily the advanced AI technology? And also the cost. The cost, when we develop the technologies, and it's not just the coding, not just, go to the open source library, the Hugging Face to get something. But that is, how about the maintenance? How about deployment? Yeah. How about the fine tune? How about, the refining, all these things, and the workflow? Because in the real product, it's not just the model, AI model, not just, it's, including the user, the experience. and the workflow, etc. But also the risk. The risk today, I think I don't need to talk about, the risk of the, generative AI. So we all know, the risks, expensive and the hallucinations, copyright, etc. Yeah.
All right, Christian.
Yeah, I think the two of you have said most of the important pieces. So I'm just, like, anyone still remember big data? Yeah? So 11, 12 years ago, I was working for a small humanities, or mainly humanities publisher, and like the thing happened, right? Like someone on the C-level was heavily influenced by a couple of sales folks from tech companies, and like, Christian, we have to do big data. And I was like, yeah, but we don't have it, right? So it's like, I mean, I was looking really hard because I wanted to play with this, I wanted to do it, but we didn't have it. So I think the first thing is really to check, like, does it apply to us in our situation? And sometimes it just doesn't apply, and sometimes it inevitably applies. That was Ian's example. Like, we're like in a text-oriented workflow/value chain. Something like generative AI will apply, whether we want it or not, right? But some other tech examples, it won't. And so I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is really basic product management 101 and good old SWOT analysis, things like what you said, like cost, value, risks, but also potential, right? So, and that is something like sometimes you have to see, like, are there any problems with that it could solve for our users, or could it improve internal workflows, et cetera, the basic stuff, right? But sometimes it's also about, like, okay, so here's some potential where it could do something new that we're currently not doing, and so it warrants some experiments to explore the potential and validate whether that's something we should invest more or not. And that's, I think, definitely true for what we're looking at the moment. And if you go back to I remember doing like a panel on blockchain. Yeah. It was like 4 years before the pandemic, right? Yes. And so that was quite different, I think, because it was like some people did some experiments, and the clear answer was, well, it doesn't really do anything for us. So it got dropped, rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is intended to be a very interactive panel. So does anybody have any questions now? Would anybody like to sort of ask something of our panel at this point? Okay, so, there we go. Ian?
Examples of stuff that were really hyped and then turned out to be terrible ideas, and equally examples of things, either process or idea or technology or tool, that initially looked like it might be underwhelming but turned out to create real value.
You mean except for blockchain?
Except for blockchain.
Blockchain's the easy example, right? It's the one we remember, right?
When we all get to shit on. I think it's really interesting, right? Data, let's take big data, right? Or like this concept of big data and the implementation of big data. I think with every new technology, everybody goes through this phase where they all get really excited. Nobody has a clue as to what they're doing. A whole bunch of experimentation. Early adopters feel really excited about the fact that they've done it. And then there are a whole bunch of anti-patterns that we discover. And then the companies that kind of wait a beat tend to possibly do it a little bit better. So there's this whole concept of like, data lakes, and now we're all into mesh architecture and the idea of smaller data sets that are curated by different groups being actually the better pattern. So I think that when I think about AI particularly, or any new technology, you're always kind of, for me, I think about two different, I'm trying not to go into very specifics about AI for obvious reasons. I used to work for a publisher. It could be considered competitive advantage, competitive whatever, but I will say this, that like with AI specifically, there's a whole bunch of people who said, hey, we really want to do stuff with LLMs, and let's use LLMs in every single process that we have. Yeah. Right? Writing articles, possibly in production. Hey, what about review? There's a larger question about safety and ethics. So you have this real push and pull between, hey, my CEO wants to make sure that our board and our shareholders knows that we're doing stuff with this. How can I ensure that they are comfortable that we're not sleeping on the job because it's considered good governance, along with, hey, reputation risk, the thing that you were talking about, and that being front and foremost. And if you fall too much into reputation and risk and don't give the shining thing, that doesn't work. If you fall too much into cowboy product management, hey, this is shiny, and don't think about risk, that doesn't work. So for me, when I think about the use of LLMs, I think we're all trying to figure out what the best place is. Should they be writing our articles? Should we be using them to create review? I mean, my instinctive reaction is no. It affects the reputation of the company that you've, PLOS or Springer Nature or Elsevier. But
that's a good.
yeah, I'm just going really wide, right? Like whatever company it is that basically looks to implement it. But can LLMs absolutely produce or help co-author smaller articles that we put in our news briefs? Possibly. Can they do good summarization? Sure. Should they be doing that? That's a larger question for the reputation of the company. So that's, I think, where it's hard to talk about technology without the application. Should they be creating chatbots for customer services to be able to use? Absolutely. It's a really easy use case. So I think it's a hard question to answer, I think, but without going to specifics.
Yeah, but I think I got like two examples. So I think the one part of your question was about like things that were overhyped, right? And I think besides the obvious elephant in the room, the whole semantic thing in the 2010, 11, 12s, there was like especially one company that I think everybody bought licenses from and that never really materialized their value, right? I think that was a good example of overhyped. The other, because it didn't scale. And the other example of underhyped, at least in Germany, is the whole concept of cloud/infrastructure as code. Because that was always, at least in a lot of discussions in Germany, was reduced to, cloud, bad, because privacy and big American companies no control, and we are completely locked into whatever price increase they might fancy, right? So that had like a bad rep from the beginning, and people always only talked about these aspects, and only very late in the game realized like the potential that there was, and that's why a lot of German companies are now playing catch up compared to, for example, American ones. And I think and it's also an unsexy topic. It's hard to sell this to C-level folks, non-technical C-level folks, right? Because you can't have these great use cases as with generative AI, for example. So it's really difficult. But like once you have it and you see the actual savings, the improvements in quality and in scalability, then it's clear that is, yeah.
I'd offer automated testing.
Automated testing, yeah.
Automated.
Similar. Like it's completely unsexy, but once you actually deploy it and people see it, we had this at PLOS very recently, where people, like we had like a very manual testing process. Well, sometimes it wasn't so much testing as like light a candle, right, process. And then like one of our engineers just went in and automated this piece and showed it to the non-technical folks who had to do the testing before, and they were like completely, this is doable? And he was like, yeah, I mean, that's just like easy, right? And they were like, wow. And yeah.
Ong, your thoughts about the things that should have been big, or things that everybody said were going to be big and then turned out to be a nothing, or things that people didn't realize were going to be as hugely impactful as they could? Can you think of any good examples?
Actually, no, not really. I think that you already covered all these things. I want to see.
Well, there's lots of little examples, isn't there? I mean, I think of like no code as something that a lot of people were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really delivered on its value.
Yeah. Wait and see.
Yeah, I was going to say wait and see on that one. I feel like, I hate to say it, wait and see.
Well, maybe it's at the bottom of the hype cycle, right, and it's going to pick up again. Maybe augmented reality, right? There was lots of excitement about that.
I would again say wait and see.
But maybe these are things that we don't know yet.
I think that could be an example of the Palm Pilot versus iPhone thing, where
the iPhone's the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's just a touchscreen was the original patent, right? And it's changed the way that we work.
So actually, you reminded me one thing is a digital twin. So in the future, the AR, VR. So I think the generative AI could be used as the personal assistant, or even another the identity in the AR world.
I'm going to say something very
to set as the agent, the society.
I'm going to say something very controversial. I also think that, I know, very controversial. Web3, we all like to shit on it. I think Web3 plus AI, at some point, there's something there. I think the combination of those two things in terms of identity, identity and being able to, ensure weirdly authentication, even though it's supposed to be I think there's something at that intersection that we will probably be talking about in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
You mean Web3 plus AI?
Yeah, I do.
So definitely AI special generative AI. Web3 is allows the people to create all the content by themselves. So the generative AI will speed up all these things. But the problem is once you create all this content, who owns this? And how can you track the identity? Maybe the blockchain. All this can help because today when we talk about in the scholarly publishing, and one of the problem is it's hard to measure the financial impact, economic impact. We can measure the research impact by citation, etc. Social impact by the social media the mentions, but how about the impact and the economic impact? So is there some?
Yeah. I would say that scholarly publishers actually have quite an important role in this, to actually distinguish the false information and the proper information, so we can become more relevant actually in the sector.
Can you say more about that? What do you mean?
A publisher can be the party that actually adds the value to a publication, if it's actual research or that it is generated, for example, just as an example. So from that angle, AI is sort of seen as a threat, and publishing companies can actually make the the differentiation between what is real and what is fake.
So my personal opinion on this is...
I'm really curious.
Yeah, I'm challenging you and saying, how are academic publishers going to be able to really do that?
With peer reviews, for example.
I don't think our peer review process works. Again, controversial statement. I don't think the peer review processes work as effectively or efficiently as they should do in today's world. And I feel like even without AI, that's a problem.
This is always a problem. A peer review system, everything has not perfect. It's always a problem. But the peer review system, at least from my personal opinion, so currently this is maybe this is one way to do it. But we can leverage the AI to speed up, to improve this. For example, we already apply the AI to automatically suggest recommend the reviewers to identify the scope, the scope analysis. Is a submission, is it relevant to these journals, etc.
So it's both ways actually. It can help the peer review, but it can also help getting out the fake publications.
Yeah, AI is a double-edged sword. So it can use to detect this, for example, AI-generated content, image and manipulated images, etc. The paper mills, detect paper mills. But also the AI has already been used to create all this, So manipulate image, manipulate the text, all this.
Really
so
cool, right? Two sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
There's I gave a talk to AJPP, the African Journal Partnership Program, a little while ago. And when I was doing my research for that, I came across this app called Chatbawa. and it's an African-based app, and it uses, I think, OpenAI as its sort of AI engine. And what it does, it's a fact-checking thing. So it was founded in response to the enormous amount of false news that was coming out as a result of the Nigerian elections. And what it does is it uses LLMs to generate sort of answers to questions, and then it cites all of its references. So it doesn't do that sort of thing or it claims to not do that sort of thing about hallucinations that everybody's concerned about. It actually cites its references. So perhaps there's something that LLMs will be able to do around this sort of thing.
Yes and no, right?
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, I remember having a conversation with OpenAI back, I want to say January of last year, and effectively trying to figure out a way to automatically detect papers that used ChatGPT or any other LLM. And it's the same problem of, ballistic missiles and anti-ballistic missiles, right? Like, as soon as you find an anti-ballistic missile system, you find ballistic missiles that are faster and outperform the anti-ballistic missile system. And the same thing applies to LLMs. So I think we're still in the process of trying to be able to vet this stuff and figure it all out. And I think what's really interesting, in terms of academic publishers having a space to do this. So I was on the board, I was actually the chair of a Crossref, and I was really struck by, you've got your large publishers who have a lot of deep pockets, who spend a lot of money being able to identify. There's actually a lot of waste in the system, right? Mm-hmm. We spend a lot of time doing R&D and coming up with technologies that make us go faster. On the large publisher side, you've got this really long tail, super long tail of publishers who cannot afford this. They simply cannot afford it because it is just too expensive. And if you look at least the membership of Crossref, and I'm not talking about pure impact, I'm talking about just volume, the large publishers are a lot smaller, and the smaller publishers actually outstrip and outweigh the number of large publishers. So a large amount of academic publishing today is being published without these tools, without these support of these services, because no one's because they can't afford it, effectively. And that causes issues in our industry.
Yeah, I think the one thing is, one thing is cannot afford. The other things probably is maybe this things is not the main focus, not the business focus, not the strategy focus. So that's why for the AI development, all these things. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Somebody's been very patient over there. Sorry we kept you waiting.
Thank you.
That's fine. Interesting piece of discussion you had there at the last point. And then now we're back to the Betamax and VHS discussion. I think that my takeaway here so far today is that we're continuing a very good but time-wise near discussion on our needs and our processes. And it does remind me of several other generations of technology hype or changes there, where the present vendors and products and companies are trying to see how can this new technology help us and improve our processes or stabilize our positions, whereas we should probably soon start talking about how will this look 5 or 10 years into the future, and how would this, yes, and it's a time where can this stuff actually disrupt us in a major way? And I think you make a very valid point. I come from Norway. We're a small scientific publication. In Norway, we are the only, with the Journal of the Norwegian Medical Society, we are reasonably well funded, and we do afford to buy and install and tune a lot of these tools. But next one down the line in Norway has a staff of 4 or 5 people, and they keep calling me about, what's DOI? How do we get on PubMed? And they're chanceless in implementing and doing a lot of this stuff. And I'm a little scared. And is there some big change out there that's enabled by these tools that we don't see? And I can take out, is there? That there is, but we just haven't thought enough about it. And I think that's where the discussion should be headed. I'd like to remind everybody about how the magazine industry, because I was in a big magazine company, tried to agree with Steve Jobs and say, oh, the iPad, that's the digital magazine, because people are still going to buy, collections of content, and we're going to just, do it digitally, and that's going to be fine, and everybody's going to keep on having their business models. Didn't quite turn out that way. And the magazine industry, well, I'm not in the magazine industry anymore, partly because that failed. Yeah, I think you make a valid example also by a technology that came out many, many years ago, the touchscreen. Nobody was able to predict how that was going to open up new opportunities and disrupt some old ones and totally change, all value chains.
Any thoughts or comments? Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't pass this up because, even though we were mentioned, Springer Nature, Elsevier, and PLOS, PLOS.
Could you all speak a little louder? It's actually
I don't know.
A little harder to hear in the back.
I can try. Is this, if I do it like this, is it?
Turn the volume up.
No. Better?
Maybe. I'll just
Kick it out.
Yeah, I'll just do it like this. So I think this is looking at this long tail of smaller organizations is a very valid point, and that's where open infrastructure and openness really comes into play. I think that's the only chance of survival that we, just a collective we, have there, I think, because the alternative is basically to sign up with an Elsevier or Wiley and use their services, which might be a good choice for some, but probably not for everyone, and also creates some kind of dependency and vendor lock-in. And the other point, the last comment about the touch screen, right? The touch screen technology was there already, and it had been there for many, many years. It's really, I think, a point where the intersection of quality, ease of use, and affordability, if that's an English word, has to be right. And it's the same thing about virtual reality at the moment, where we're still not quite there yet, but that might also change.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point about the sort of shared infrastructure thing. A Crossref is a great example of that, right? Having that central metadata registry has been really beneficial in terms of interoperability. And you look at the repository community, and it's not we're doing anywhere near as well in terms of having, broad adoption of standard information interchange. And I think it's the shared infrastructure that has really benefited that.
So important to share the infrastructure. This one part. Another thing is maybe all this, the publishers and the industry together to share, the best practice and share the data, share some data, share some of the license learned, especially for integrity. It's very, very important. And also some of the shared infrastructure is unique. They play a unique position. For example, the STM recently released, the shared duplicated submission detection. I think this is they are in a unique position to do this, to allow the different publishers to participate and share. It's very hard. It's almost impossible for single publisher to do these things.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts? It's all been said. It's all been said.
Basically.
We got a question over there. We got a microphone.
At the risk of sounding like Eeyore and real doom and gloom, could I ask the panel to reflect on a comment you made earlier about the arms race metaphor? Mm-hmm. Let's suppose we never get to a point where we can spot an AI-generated paper. Right, and and now imagine this is really happening. Then never mind all of the money that the Elseviers, Springer Natures, other large publishers are available, have thrown at all this. Just let's suppose we simply cannot spot it. What then?
Right, so here's my thought on that. Who cares if AI writes the paper?
Yeah.
Who cares, right? What you really, really care about. So this is, I think...
it's about fakery.
No, but that's the thing, right? That's not... AI-generated papers is not equal to fake papers. it can be used to write a fake paper, but it does not necessarily mean it will be. And it also depends on your definition of AI, right? Grammarly looks to be able to change the grammar in your paper. We are having conversations with companies, I cannot remember any names right now, who look to be able to edit your paper so that it's got better English so it can be acceptable to, review boards. And we were talking about using AI to be able to do that, which effectively is rewriting your paper. Yeah. So I think when you think about the application of any technology, and specifically something as powerful as, again, generative AI is a very interesting term, but the use of NLP, like generation of language, I think what's more important is for most industries, specifically academic publishing, to really understand where is it making its money, what is its USP, right? Brands like Springer Nature, PLOS, again, I'm using PLOS because you're on the board, Elsevier, Wiley, whatever, like the whole point of it is primarily to provide the rubber stamp that yes, there's rigor in science. So effectively, detecting an AI-generated paper isn't important. What's really important is understanding I have done my experiment, the data is relatively is correct, I'm using synthetic data here, this has accurately been, you have actually said that you have done this as a part of the submission process, and people who are looking at looking at your paper are able to verify the claims associated with it, and there is that accurate chain. So I think the real focus, people should not be moving into the space of, oh my God, AI generated this. It's saying, okay, how are we going to ensure that we're still providing a valuable service, which is, this is factual science, and how are academic publishers going to be doing that? And then the other piece, realistically, is what are the services that we can then provide to an author to ensure that the science is then pushed out? Because realistically, again, paywalls are going away because of open access. So how are we providing values and services to our authors and science as a whole? Because realistically, this technology, maybe it helps us with the reproducibility crisis that we're all facing right now. That could be interesting too.
I think this is a good example of like, what's the actual problem,
yeah.
like what you just outlined. Yeah. And second, I think this is already here, right? So there's no way we can spot an AI-generated paper if it's done properly. Yeah. There's no way we can do it today, and there's certainly no way we will be able to do it next year.
There's a lady at the back who's been holding her hand up for us, if that's okay. Yeah, lady in the lovely sweater.
Thank you. I just wanted to pose a philosophical question on that, because I'm from a scientific publishing background, so I totally understand why the conversation moves naturally to the sciences. And I agree with you 100% that an AI-generated paper that's based on real experimentational data, there's no real problem. I wonder how that applies to the humanities. Yeah. It's something that I think is being left out of this discussion somewhat. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, can you give some examples? What do you mean, the humanity?
I guess, it's one thing to say, a paper written by an AI or augmented by an AI that's based on experimentation that's been done by people or what have you, it has a factual, it is or it is not correct. When it comes to the humanities and we're talking about, the creative side of things, whether it's literature, whether it's philosophy, whether it's arts and dance and theatre, where is the line for things that may be generated in those spaces?
But no, go ahead.
Thanks. So I think today the many publishers, they banned the AI, generative AI as a co-authorship. The main reason is because the AI cannot take the accountability, not responsible for what they are doing. But maybe we can think about from the other perspective, because today is corporate law, all the focus on the human. And also, if we, in this intelligent age, especially when the AI is generative AI come, should we rethink about redesign the corporate law? It's not only focused on the human, but also focus on the AI. Sometimes, the people use AI to create, some of the very innovative, creative, the things, which is the original. But who owns this? What's ownership? So I think the copyright. I'm not the expert, but I know in the copyright the area they are discussing. There's a lot of discussing, and also in the academic publishing side, should we reconsider about the definition of the contribution? Should we rethink about it of originality? What's about this? Is it still as same as before? And how much the AI the contribute in not only the help them to rewrite the paper and the polished paper, but how about the AI? Now the AI. I personally believe the AI in the future. Each of us have the personal AI assistant, especially for a researcher, have the personal assistant. Yeah. They not only help researcher to discover the information, but also the digest information, the understand the information, apply the information, and help them to do the experiment. So this is a lot of things. To this extent, should AI be considered as a co-author? So I think this is what I try to say. It's questions. I was questionable.
So I actually worked in humanities for roughly 20 years. So, and I think there's 3 different aspects here to your question. Like one is humanities research, and there's not really creativity involved there. And no offense to the researchers, but it's and there's 2 different things. One is very traditional, sometimes qualitative humanities research, which is hermeneutical, right? So, so there's no real data behind it, and this is, and then there's the more scientifically oriented humanities research, especially, for example, linguistics, where you operate with data sets, and this is very similar to science publishing, actually. So the first category, I think, again, if a tool helps you to formulate a better argument or to uncover a contradiction in another person's argument, perfectly fine. I mean, nobody really cares whether you sat in your closet thinking about it for a week or you did it within 30 minutes time, right? As long as you, I think as long as it's clear who actually did what. That's the important piece. And the thing about creativity, again, so if someone writes a poem about daffodils, right, and if that, or a song about X, and if that resonates with people, who cares whether it was William Wordsworth or ChatGPT 4.5? The questions, very practical questions, it boils down to what Hong said about who owns what and what are the legal implications and all that. And if AI cannot own anything, then all the better, because then we don't have to pay for that content.
Yeah, so I think sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? And I think the reproducibility crisis it's not a technological problem, it's a socio-technical problem.
Yeah.
Right, so that's why open science is often put forward as a good solution to that, because once you've got this paper trail of data and so forth and methodology and all the rest of it, it's, then you can't really fake the paper because it's got this massive sort of paper chain behind it. So I guess the question is there something equivalent in arts and humanities, perhaps around, so in practice-based research, for example, there's work being done. A year or so ago, I think it was, AHRC commissioned a series of exploratory pieces to look at practice-based research repositories, and to build sort of the next generation of that to better document practice research, and that creates a much better, sort of basis on which to judge pieces of work and describe their impact and, and everybody that's involved and the outputs and the inputs and all the rest of it. So yeah, so I wonder if there's something we can do to sort of improve the paper trail, if you like, for a lot of these disciplines. Any thoughts?
I think that's certainly going to become very important, also for identifying or proving identity. Like if you do a submission for whatever piece of research, right, at the moment for most journals, right, you just do it. I mean, all you need is an email address, and even that could probably be fake. It's not really checked, right? I think that definitely will change in the next couple of years.
and going back to blockchain, no, but
so you're speaking this is what I mean by the sort of like intersection between AI and well, blockchain or Web3 in particular.
But Web3, yeah. So definitely like all the bits and pieces in, or research objects basically, right, that contribute. I mean, it's not like a paper, right? Research is like an ongoing thing in a way. And how to interconnect them, I think that's a challenge to solve, how to properly designate, identify, and connect
credit
these
and all the
pieces.
rest of it.
Credit,
Absolutely. All right, so we're nearly at time now.
I think there was a question.
Yeah, we've got one more question from Ian, but he's playing with his phone now. So any final thoughts or questions? All right, in that case, I think all that is left is to thank our panel for an excellent discussion, and thank everybody for listening.